Have you ever wondered if, in the pursuit of inner peace, you might be denying an essential part of your humanity? Stoicism, a philosophy that promises balance, may actually hide a darker side. Could this quest for serenity be keeping us from truly living? Stoicism and its origins. A deep dive. Stoicism emerged in ancient Greece around 300 BC, founded by Zeno of Citium, a philosopher who sought a way for people to lead lives that were peaceful, virtuous, and in alignment with nature. But to understand the true impact of Stoicism, it's essential to explore not only its simple foundations, but also the profound implications of its teachings. The birth of Stoicism. Zeno of Citium was born in the city of Citium on the island of Cyprus. He came from a wealthy family but lost everything when his ship was wrecked during a voyage to Athens. This loss could have shattered him, but instead it sparked a profound change in his life. He began studying philosophy and was drawn to the teachings of Socrates, Plato, and the Cynics. However, he found their teachings incomplete for his personal quest to live a life of meaning. Zeno eventually developed his own philosophical system, which he called Stoicism, named after the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, a public building in Athens where he taught. Stoicism was rooted in the idea that a life well lived depends on virtue, which is found in living in accordance with nature and exercising self-control. The core philosophy of Stoicism. At its core, Stoicism is about understanding and controlling one's emotions, focusing on the things that we can control while accepting the things we cannot. Zeno's philosophy held that our thoughts and actions are within our power, but the external world, such as other people's actions, natural events, and the future, is not. Stoics believe that it is futile to try to control what is beyond our influence. Instead, the Stoic must learn to focus on their own reactions to those external events. 1. Emotional control. Mastery over the mind. One of the primary tenets of Stoicism is the importance of controlling one's emotions. Emotions, according to Stoic thought, are often the result of irrational judgments about the world. For instance, we might experience anger or frustration because we believe that something should be a certain way. But that belief is not based on objective truth, only on our subjective interpretation. For Stoics, true happiness is achieved through the cultivation of a rational mind that understands what is under our control and what is not. This rational control allows individuals to remain serene in the face of adversity. Rather than giving in to destructive emotions like anger, fear, or sadness, Stoics practice apatheia, a state of being unaffected by passions, where we are not ruled by irrational emotions but respond thoughtfully to life's challenges. 2. Focusing on what you can control. In Stoicism, one of the most liberating concepts is the idea that our happiness doesn't depend on external events, but on our own perceptions and actions. Zeno's philosophy teaches that the only things truly within our control are our own beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. Everything else, the actions of others, the outcomes of events, the weather, lies beyond our grasp. This core idea is encapsulated in the Stoic dichotomy of control: things we can control, our thoughts, actions, and judgments, and things we cannot control, the external world, other people's actions, the past, and the future. By focusing on what we can control and accepting what we cannot, we free ourselves from the stress of trying to change the uncontrollable. This leads to a sense of peace and contentment that comes from the realization that we are masters of our inner world. 3. The acceptance of fate. Amor fati. Stoicism also teaches the concept of amor fati, which translates to love of fate. It is the idea that we must not only accept the things that happen to us, but also embrace them as opportunities for growth. This goes beyond mere acceptance. It's a mindset that encourages us to welcome everything that life presents, whether it's a hardship, a challenge, or a joy, as part of our journey. The Stoics believed that the universe operates according to a rational order, and while we may not understand why things happen, they happen for a reason. Rather than resisting fate, Stoics advocate embracing it, trusting that even painful experiences can teach us valuable lessons. This perspective allows us to remain peaceful in the face of adversity, seeing setbacks not as defeats, but as challenges that contribute to our growth. The profound impact of Stoicism. At first glance, Stoicism may appear to be a simple philosophy, focused on controlling emotions and accepting the inevitable. But its simplicity is what makes it so profound and practical. By practicing Stoicism, we don't only learn to weather the storms of life, we also learn to find peace and joy in any situation. For Zeno and later Stoics like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism became not just a philosophy to study, but a way to live, a guide for navigating life with wisdom and virtue. For them, the pursuit of happiness was not about seeking pleasure or avoiding discomfort, but about developing the strength to remain virtuous, no matter what external circumstances arose. Stoicism's lasting influence. The Stoic philosophy has survived for over 2 millennia, influencing countless thinkers and leaders throughout history. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, used Stoic principles to guide him through the burdens of ruling an empire and the personal struggles he faced. Seneca, a wealthy statesman, found in Stoicism a way to reconcile his public duties with his private quest for inner peace. Epictetus, born a slave, used Stoicism to transform his own mindset, proving that external circumstances do not determine our capacity for happiness. Even today, Stoic principles resonate with people seeking ways to manage stress, overcome adversity, and live a life of meaning. The philosophy's enduring appeal lies in its practical wisdom, encouraging individuals to focus on what they can control and accept the rest. The Stoic legacy. Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius' Stoicism, although founded by Zeno of Citium, evolved significantly over time, particularly through the work of later Stoic philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Each of these figures helped refine and spread Stoicism, turning it from a school of thought into a way of life that resonated deeply with people in different walks of life, whether they were emperors, slaves, or philosophers. They each contributed to the Stoic philosophy in ways that expanded its reach, providing invaluable insights into human nature, virtue, and resilience. Seneca, the philosopher of virtue and practical wisdom. Seneca, 4 BCE, 65 CE, a Roman statesman, playwright, and tutor to Emperor Nero, is one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers. Despite his wealth, power, and political connections, Seneca's life was marked by contradictions. His wealth and involvement in the political elite were at odds with the Stoic ideal of simplicity and modesty. Yet, his writings on Stoicism remain some of the most widely read and deeply respected, as they deal directly with the challenges of living virtuously in a complex, often corrupt world. 1. Virtue is the only true good. Seneca emphasized that virtue, living in accordance with reason and cultivating wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, is the only true good. Everything else, such as wealth, power, or pleasure, is indifferent. It's neither good nor bad in itself. Seneca believed that we often deceive ourselves by pursuing these external things, thinking they will bring happiness, but they are fleeting and cannot provide lasting fulfillment. In his work on the shortness of life, Seneca famously argued that most people waste their lives chasing after external goods and pleasures, while true fulfillment comes from the cultivation of inner virtue. For him, living virtuously was not an abstract goal, but a practical one, something to be done in everyday life. He encouraged people to focus on their inner lives, to meditate on their actions and thoughts, and to live with intention. 2. Embrace adversity with rationality. Seneca also focused heavily on the Stoic idea of accepting and even embracing adversity. He argued that challenges and setbacks were not only inevitable but also necessary for growth. In letters to Lucilius, Seneca often stressed that misfortune could be turned into an opportunity for cultivating resilience. He believed that by responding to adversity with calmness and rationality, a person could become stronger, more virtuous, and more at peace with themselves. For Seneca, adversity was the crucible in which true character was forged. Epictetus, from slave to sage. Epictetus, ca. 55, 135 CE, was born a slave in the Roman Empire but later became one of the most influential Stoic philosophers. His life story is a testament to the power of the Stoic mindset. Despite enduring personal hardship, including the cruelty of his masters, Epictetus developed a philosophy that focused intensely on the control of one's internal state and one's reactions to external circumstances. 1. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Epictetus's philosophy revolves around the idea that we cannot control the events that happen to us, but we can control how we respond to them. This fundamental Stoic teaching is captured in his famous dichotomy. There are things within our control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, and things beyond our control, the actions of others, external events, the past, and the future. Epictetus argued that the key to happiness and tranquility was learning to distinguish between these two categories and focusing only on what we could control. His teachings empowered individuals to let go of frustration over things they could not change, such as external circumstances or other people's behavior, and to focus on their own thoughts, attitudes, and reactions. By training ourselves to respond with calmness and rationality, we could maintain our inner peace regardless of external chaos. 2. The role of adversity in character development for Epictetus. Hardship was not something to be avoided, but rather something to be embraced as part of our moral development. He viewed challenges as opportunities for growth, where the Stoic virtues of patience, courage, and wisdom could be practiced and strengthened. Epictetus believed that by approaching adversity with the right mindset, we could turn it into a source of strength and wisdom. In his famous work, The Enchiridion, Epictetus emphasized that when we are faced with difficulty, we should not react emotionally, but instead maintain our rational minds. This practice of emotional control, remaining unshaken by the external world, was central to Epictetus's philosophy, and it contributed greatly to the Stoic emphasis on self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. Marcus Aurelius, 121–180 CE, perhaps the most famous Stoic of all, was not only a philosopher, but also the emperor of Rome during a tumultuous period marked by military conflict, political intrigue, and personal loss. His Meditations, a series of personal writings, reveal his deep commitment to Stoic philosophy and his ongoing struggle to live by its principles in the face of immense personal and public pressure. 1. The duty of a leader to embrace. Virtue. Marcus Aurelius saw himself as a servant of the Roman people, a duty he took with the utmost seriousness. He applied Stoic principles to his role as emperor, emphasizing that leaders should embody the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. In Meditations, he often reminds himself that his position as ruler was not one of privilege, but one of responsibility, a duty to serve the greater good. One of the key aspects of Marcus Aurelius's philosophy was the belief that leaders should remain humble and detached from personal ambition. He saw personal growth and the cultivation of virtue as the highest goals for anyone in a position of power. He believed that rulers, like anyone else, should focus on their inner moral character and work to align their actions with reason, regardless of external circumstances. 2. Facing adversity with calm and rationality. Marcus Aurelius's writings are filled with reflections on how to face adversity with a clear mind. He often pondered the inevitability of suffering, loss, and hardship, and repeatedly reminded himself that these are a natural part of life. In Meditations, he counsels himself to view obstacles as opportunities for growth, to treat other people's faults with patience, and to accept with equanimity the hardships that life presents. He understood that as emperor, he would face great challenges, both external and internal, but his Stoic training taught him that his greatest responsibility was to remain calm, focused, and rational, regardless of the turmoil around him. His example remains an enduring model of how to apply Stoic teachings to the highest levels of leadership. The core of Stoicism: the power of control over our reactions. At the very heart of Stoicism lies a deceptively simple yet profound idea. We cannot control the world around us, but we have complete control over how we react to it. This fundamental principle of Stoic philosophy has had a lasting impact, providing individuals with a powerful tool to face life's challenges with greater equanimity, resilience, and clarity. It's a concept that promises liberation from the emotional turmoil that often arises from external events and circumstances. However, when delved into more deeply, it reveals both its potential and its complexities. The distinction between what we can and cannot control. One of the key teachings of Stoicism is the idea of distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously articulated this dichotomy, arguing that some things are up to us and some things are not. The things that are up to us are our own beliefs, thoughts, actions, and reactions. Everything else, such as the behavior of others, the natural world, the past, and the future, lies beyond our direct influence. This understanding can be incredibly liberating. The external world is unpredictable, often uncontrollable and full of challenges. We can't stop a storm from happening, nor can we control how someone else behaves or how the economy functions. However, by accepting that we cannot change these things, we are freed from the burden of trying to do so. We stop wasting energy on futile attempts to influence the uncontrollable, and instead focus on shaping our own responses. The Stoic practice of emotional control. A central idea in Stoicism is emotional control. According to Stoic thought, emotions like anger, fear, anxiety, and frustration arise from our judgments and interpretations of the world. For instance, if we lose our job, we may feel anxiety or anger because we interpret the situation as a personal failure or a threat to our future. However, Stoics argue that these emotions are not caused by the event itself, but by the way we perceive and react to it. This is where the idea of invulnerability to suffering comes into play. Stoicism teaches that while we can't always avoid pain or hardship, we can control how we react to it. The Stoic goal is not to become emotionless or indifferent to the world around us, but to become more resilient in the face of it. By shifting our focus from trying to control external events to cultivating inner control over our thoughts and emotions, we become less vulnerable to suffering. 1. Embracing the power of perception. The Stoics believed that perception is everything. What matters is not the event itself, but our interpretation of it. A person who loses a job might interpret the event as a disaster, leading to feelings of panic, resentment, or despair. Alternatively, another person might see the same event as an opportunity for personal growth, a chance to re-evaluate their career path or explore new possibilities. This shift in perception is a central Stoic practice. Instead of seeing challenges as threats or obstacles, the Stoics encourage us to reframe them as opportunities for growth and development. This doesn't mean ignoring the difficulties that come with adversity, but rather choosing not to let those difficulties control our emotions or define our lives. 2. Cultivating the Stoic virtue of resilience. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without pain or hardship. Instead, it promises a life in which pain and hardship are met with resilience. The Stoic practice involves acknowledging suffering, facing it head-on, and accepting it as a natural part of life. Through this acceptance, we reduce the emotional suffering that arises from resistance or denial. The great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on how life's difficulties are not personal affronts, but inevitable occurrences in the grand scheme of the universe. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, challenges should not be seen as barriers, but as the very conditions under which we practice and develop Stoic virtues, like patience, courage, and wisdom. 3. Living according to nature and reason. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature and reason is at the core of a virtuous life. Stoicism teaches that the universe operates according to rational laws, and our job is to align ourselves with this rational order. This means acting with virtue and making choices based on reason rather than on unchecked emotions. When we allow ourselves to be controlled by emotions, whether anger, fear, or envy, we are acting out of sync with nature and reason. Stoicism calls us to return to a state of harmony with the world by cultivating rationality. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings or living without passion, but it does mean responding to life's ups and downs with a balanced, rational mindset. We are encouraged to reflect on our emotions, understand where they come from, and choose a course of action that aligns with reason rather than reactive impulses. The promise of invulnerability to suffering. The idea of becoming invulnerable to suffering is one of Stoicism's most appealing promises. If we can master our reactions, if we can detach ourselves from the uncontrollable external world and focus on our internal state, we can become impervious to much of the emotional turmoil that others experience. This sense of inner peace comes not from the absence of hardship, but from our ability to face it without being shaken. This invulnerability, however, should not be mistaken for apathy or detachment from life. On the contrary, Stoicism teaches us to embrace life fully, both its pleasures and its pains, while maintaining a sense of emotional equilibrium. By understanding that we cannot control the external world, we stop resisting it and learn to move through life with greater clarity and purpose. 1. Emotional resilience in practice. Imagine being able to face a stressful situation, whether it's a personal crisis, a difficult conversation, or a challenging task at work, with a calm mind and a steady heart. This is what the Stoics aimed for. Rather than being overwhelmed by fear or frustration, you are able to step back, assess the situation rationally, and respond thoughtfully. This practice of emotional resilience doesn't happen overnight. It requires ongoing effort and self-reflection. But as we continue to apply Stoic principles to our daily lives, we begin to cultivate a sense of invulnerability to the emotional swings that often accompany external events. We learn that we can face any situation with a sense of inner peace, knowing that we are in control of our own reactions. The limitations of Stoic invulnerability. While Stoicism provides a powerful framework for emotional control, it's important to recognize its limitations. Stoics don't claim that their philosophy will eliminate all pain or suffering. Pain, grief, and loss are inevitable parts of life, and Stoicism teaches us to acknowledge them fully rather than pretend they don't exist. Stoic invulnerability is not the denial of these emotions, but the mastery over how we respond to them. Moreover, Stoicism doesn't suggest we become indifferent or passive in the face of injustice, suffering, or wrongdoing. Instead, it calls us to engage with the world rationally, responding to external events in ways that align with virtue, not emotion. In this way, Stoicism encourages active participation in life, but with the wisdom to not be controlled by it. Epictetus and the Stoic approach to adversity. The question of emotional suppression. Epictetus, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, is a remarkable figure in history. Born around 55 CE, he spent much of his early life as a slave, enduring hardships that few of us could imagine. Despite this, He became one of the most influential thinkers of his time, teaching that the key to a fulfilling life lies not in external circumstances, but in how we respond to them. His teachings on maintaining calm and composure in the face of adversity are at the core of Stoic philosophy. However, this raises a crucial question. Can we truly live a full and authentic life by suppressing our emotions in the name of control? Epictetus's teachings on adversity and emotional control. Epictetus's personal life was marked by adversity. After being born into slavery, he was eventually freed, but his hardships didn't end there. He faced challenges from his physical condition. He had a lame leg, possibly due to being abused by his master, to his status in society. Despite these struggles, Epictetus became known for his ability to maintain inner peace and composure in the most difficult circumstances. In his most famous work, the Discourses, and later, the Enchiridion, Epictetus teaches that we should not allow external events to disturb our inner tranquility. The Stoic approach to adversity is one of acceptance and control. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This suggests that adversity itself is not the problem, but rather our perception and reaction to it. For Epictetus, it wasn't about eliminating emotion, but about regulating our responses. If we are faced with hardship, be it the loss of a loved one, financial ruin, or social rejection, the key is to understand that while we cannot control the events, we can control how we interpret and respond to them. This perspective allows us to meet challenges with equanimity, reducing the emotional turmoil that often accompanies difficult circumstances. The Stoic ideal, emotional control as freedom. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the belief that emotional control leads to true freedom. By focusing only on what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, we are no longer at the mercy of external events. This sense of mastery over one's inner state is seen as a form of liberation, freeing the individual from the anxiety, fear, and suffering that arise when we are overly attached to outcomes or external conditions. However, this raises a deeper philosophical question. Does emotional control, to the extent that the Stoics advocate, truly allow us to live a full, rich, and authentic life? Is it possible to cultivate a meaningful existence by suppressing or avoiding emotions in the name of reason and control? While Stoicism teaches that emotions such as anger, grief, or fear can often cloud our judgment and lead us away from virtue, some argue that to suppress emotions entirely might strip life of its depth and complexity. The tension between control and authenticity. While Stoicism advocates for emotional regulation, it's important to explore whether this philosophy calls for the suppression of emotions or their transformation. The Stoics didn't encourage the total eradication of feelings, but rather the ability to respond to them in a way that aligns with reason and virtue. Emotions, when allowed to govern our actions unchecked, can lead to impulsive decisions and unnecessary suffering. However, Stoics would argue that recognizing and understanding our emotions is part of the process of self-mastery, not suppression. But the question remains, can a life that seeks emotional control truly be fulfilling? After all, emotions are what make us human. Joy, love, passion, and even sorrow are essential parts of the human experience. To some, the Stoic prescription to control one's emotional responses may seem cold or detached. How can we fully experience life without allowing ourselves to feel deeply, to be moved by the things we care about, and to embrace the richness of emotional experiences? The role of emotion in living a full life. To address this, we must differentiate between suppressing emotions and transforming them. Stoicism does not teach that we should never feel anger, sadness, or fear. Instead, it advocates for the idea of transforming these emotions. For instance, if we experience anger, rather than reacting with destructive behavior or resentment, the Stoic approach suggests that we should examine the underlying cause of that anger. Is it rooted in something we can control? If not, then it is our reaction, our emotional attachment to that external event, that we need to address. This process of self-reflection allows us to experience emotions in a more constructive way. Stoicism encourages us to feel deeply, but to do so with wisdom and control. The emotions themselves are not inherently bad or unhealthy. It is our response to them that determines their impact on our well-being. A Stoic may still experience grief after the loss of a loved one, but the grief will be tempered with understanding that the loss is a natural part of life, something that is beyond our control. Derberg, finding balance. Can we live fully with emotional control? The core challenge of Stoicism, and the central issue raised by Epictetus's teachings, is finding the balance between emotional control and emotional engagement. On one hand, emotional control allows us to face adversity with resilience, navigate difficulties with calmness, and preserve our inner peace despite the storms around us. On the other hand, a life completely devoid of emotional expression may lack the very richness and authenticity that makes it meaningful. So, can we live a full life by suppressing our emotions in the name of control? The Stoic answer isn't necessarily one of complete emotional suppression, but rather of mastery over our emotional responses. Stoicism encourages us to confront our emotions, understand them, and choose how to respond in a way that aligns with virtue, wisdom, and reason. Emotions are seen as an essential part of the human experience, but it is how we respond to them that shapes our destiny. The truth lies in transforming, rather than eliminating, our emotions. A life lived with emotional control is not a life without feeling. It is a life in which we can experience all of life's highs and lows without being enslaved by them. It is a life where adversity, loss, and pain are met with resilience, love, and understanding, allowing us to navigate the complexities of existence with grace and wisdom. In this way, we live fully, not by suppressing our emotions, but by cultivating the ability to master them. Emotional control as a path to authentic living. Epictetus's teachings on emotional control offer us a powerful tool for dealing with life's challenges. By focusing on our responses to adversity, we can free ourselves from the suffering that arises from external events. However, this freedom does not mean abandoning emotions altogether. It means transforming them, understanding them, and choosing how to respond with wisdom. Through this, we can live a fuller, more authentic life, one in which our emotions are honored, but not allowed to control us. The Stoic path is not one of emotional suppression, but one of emotional resilience, allowing us to experience life in its fullest form while maintaining inner peace. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, and the cost of emotional control. Marcus Aurelius, often hailed as one of the greatest Roman emperors, is also revered as one of the most significant Stoic philosophers. His reign, which lasted from 161 to 180 CE, was marked by wars, political unrest, and personal loss. Amidst these challenges, he maintained a demeanor of calm, Stoic resolve, adhering to the principles of Stoicism he had studied and embraced throughout his life. Yet, behind his outward tranquility, a deeper question emerges. Did Marcus Aurelius truly live a full and rich life? Or did he, in his commitment to Stoic duty, bury his emotions for the sake of his role as emperor? The life of Marcus Aurelius. Duty amidst adversity. Born into a life of privilege, Marcus Aurelius was groomed to lead the Roman Empire. He was adopted by Emperor Antoninus Pius and received an education steeped in philosophy, particularly Stoicism. Under the guidance of his teachers, including the Stoic philosopher Junius Rusticus, Marcus developed a deep respect for Stoic teachings, which emphasize self-control, virtue, and rationality over the pursuit of pleasure or emotional indulgence. During his reign, Marcus faced numerous hardships. The Roman Empire was embroiled in continuous wars, particularly the Marcomannic Wars, 166 to 180 CE, against Germanic tribes. His reign was also marked by political challenges, a plague that ravaged the empire, and the death of his beloved wife, Faustina, with whom he had many children. Through all of this, Marcus is remembered for his ability to maintain a calm, composed demeanor, seemingly untouched by the emotional turmoil surrounding him. He was a model of Stoic virtue, exercising patience, perseverance, and rationality in the face of adversity. His personal writings, known as meditations, offer a glimpse into the internal workings of his mind. These reflections, written in private, served as a kind of moral guide for himself, reminders of his commitment to Stoic ideals. He often exhorts himself to accept hardship and to focus on his duties regardless of personal discomfort. The impediment to action advances action. "What stands in the way becomes the way," he famously wrote, indicating that challenges were not to be avoided, but embraced as opportunities for growth. The Stoic ideal, duty over emotion. At the core of Stoicism is the idea that one's duty to society and to virtue supersedes personal feelings. Marcus Aurelius, as both an emperor and a philosopher, was bound by this philosophy. As a leader, his primary responsibility was to uphold the well-being of the empire, and this required him to subjugate personal desires, fears, and even grief to the demands of his position. In his meditations, Marcus frequently writes about the need to rise above emotions. He reflects on the transitory nature of life and encourages himself to remain focused on his duties rather than be distracted by fleeting feelings. For example, he writes, "Do not waste time on what you cannot control. Accept things as they are and do what is within your power." This attitude of rational detachment and emotional control allowed him to lead the empire through some of its most turbulent times, maintaining a sense of stability and calm in the midst of crisis. But therein lies the question. Was Marcus Aurelius truly living a full, rich life by adhering so strictly to Stoic principles? Or did his emotional restraint come at a personal cost? The emotional toll of Stoicism. While Marcus Aurelius's outward demeanor was that of the ideal Stoic, calm, rational, and composed, one must wonder if this emotional control masked a deeper internal struggle. His meditations reveal not just his philosophical reflections, but also hints of the emotional weight he carried. He writes of the pain of loss, the inevitability of death, and the burden of his responsibilities. These writings show that despite his attempts at emotional detachment, Marcus was very much aware of the emotional toll his life took on him. For example, Marcus expresses regret and sorrow over the deaths of his children. In his writings, he often reminds himself that the loss of loved ones is part of the natural order, but his grief is still palpable. In a famous passage, he writes, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This suggests that while he strived to live virtuously, he was not immune to the emotional suffering that accompanies love, loss, and personal hardship. Even as he wrote with detachment about life and death, there is an undeniable humanity in his words. He struggled with loneliness, despair, and the awareness that his reign would come to an end. He was a man who, in many ways, deeply felt the weight of his responsibilities, but believed that emotion, no matter how valid or profound, should never cloud the rational pursuit of duty. This brings us to the heart of the question. Did Marcus Aurelius truly live a full life, or did he suppress his emotions in the name of duty? Was he, in essence, burying his emotions to live according to the Stoic ideal, or was his emotional suppression part of the very burden he carried as an emperor? The conflict between duty and emotional fulfillment. Stoicism encourages individuals to focus on virtue and rationality, to embrace hardship as a way of growing stronger, and to view external events, such as the death of loved ones or political strife, as things outside of our control. The ideal Stoic does not let emotions dictate their actions or beliefs. Instead, They strive for an emotional equilibrium that allows them to respond to life's challenges with reason and fortitude. However, there is a tension between the Stoic ideal and the emotional fulfillment that many seek in life. A Stoic may see love, grief, and personal joy as transient and uncontrollable, something that should be viewed with detachment rather than embraced with passion. While this emotional regulation is undoubtedly a path to inner peace and resilience, it can also raise questions about the authenticity of one's emotional experiences. Can a life dedicated solely to rationality and duty truly be fulfilling if it involves stifling the deep, often messy emotions that make us human? For Marcus, his philosophy was not about rejecting emotions altogether, but about learning to control them so that they did not interfere with his duties as a leader. Yet this control came at a cost, perhaps the cost of living a fully emotional life. His adherence to Stoicism meant that he often placed the demands of his role above personal desires and emotional well-being, potentially leading to a life that was less about personal fulfillment and more about maintaining a sense of duty. The cost of emotional suppression. The notion that Marcus Aurelius might have buried his emotions in the name of duty does not diminish his greatness as an emperor or philosopher, but it does offer a poignant insight into the complexities of living according to Stoic principles. By constantly striving to remain above his emotions, Marcus may have missed opportunities to experience life more fully. While he certainly found solace and strength in Stoicism, there is a deeper question about whether his life could have been more enriching had he allowed himself to feel and express emotions without always subjugating them to reason. Moreover, Marcus's own reflections suggest that he was aware of the personal cost of his emotional restraint. He recognized that his emotional control was not always an easy task, and at times it seemed to be a form of self-discipline born out of necessity rather than choice. As an emperor, he could not afford to indulge in personal grief or express vulnerability. His duty demanded that he stay composed, not just for himself, but for his people. Living a full life with emotional mastery. Marcus Aurelius's life is a testament to the Stoic ideal of emotional control, but it also raises important questions about the nature of emotional fulfillment. His reign was undoubtedly marked by wisdom, resilience, and virtue, and his ability to maintain composure amidst the chaos of leadership is something to be admired. However, his writings also reveal the inner conflicts he faced, hinting at the emotional sacrifices he made in the pursuit of his Stoic duties. Ultimately, Marcus Aurelius may not have buried his emotions entirely, but he certainly prioritized rationality and duty over emotional expression. His life offers us a powerful lesson in the importance of emotional control, but it also invites us to consider the balance between duty and personal emotional fulfillment. The Stoic path is one of wisdom and resilience, but it is also a path that requires careful navigation between detachment and engagement, between reason and emotion. The full life may not lie in the suppression of emotions, but in the mastery of them, allowing us to live with both wisdom and heart. The true richness of life. Embracing vulnerability and connection beyond Stoic control. Stoicism, as a philosophy, is often hailed for its emphasis on emotional control and resilience in the face of life's adversities. At the heart of Stoic thought lies the idea that we cannot control external events, but we can control our reactions to them. This notion promises a kind of invulnerability, a way to avoid being swept away by the storms of life. However, there is a deeper, more nuanced aspect of human experience that Stoicism, when misunderstood or overly rigidly applied, might overlook. The richness of life does not solely lie in our ability to control our emotions or suppress our vulnerabilities, but in our willingness to open up to others, share our struggles, and embrace the full spectrum of human connection. The Stoic ideal, emotional control. As strength Stoicism, founded in ancient Greece by Zeno of Citium, teaches that virtue lies in living in accordance with nature and reason. The Stoics argue that we should cultivate self-mastery over our emotions, viewing emotional reactions like anger, fear, or grief as obstacles to rational thought and virtuous living. According to the Stoic philosophers, such as Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, true strength comes from controlling our emotional responses to external events, seeing them not as personal affronts or sources of distress, but as opportunities to practice virtue. In this framework, suffering is seen not as something to be avoided at all costs, but as an inevitable part of life that we must learn to accept with composure. The Stoic practice is about creating an inner fortress that protects us from the turbulence of the world, a fortress built on reason, discipline, and emotional control. This philosophy, when practiced well, has helped many individuals navigate personal challenges, from loss and failure to hardship and betrayal, with a sense of calm detachment. But in this pursuit of emotional control, there is a danger of misunderstanding Stoicism. It can lead us to believe that emotional vulnerability is a weakness, that suffering should be handled alone, and that true strength comes from being impervious to pain. The misinterpretation of Stoicism. The trap of emotional suppression. While the Stoic philosophy certainly values emotional control, it can sometimes be misinterpreted as a call for emotional suppression or detachment to an extreme degree. In a society that often values Stoic self-reliance and the idea of toughness, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing that true strength means remaining unaffected by the emotional complexities of life. This is where Stoicism, when taken to an unhealthy extreme, may create a false dichotomy between strength and vulnerability, teaching us to avoid expressing emotions such as grief, fear, or sadness, lest we appear weak or out of control. When we interpret Stoicism in this way, we risk becoming isolated, believing that we must face all struggles alone, without the support or connection of others. The idea of being strong becomes linked to the idea of remaining emotionally impenetrable, shutting others out, and bearing our burdens silently. This version of Stoicism can unintentionally create a sense of isolation, as we may come to feel that any form of emotional openness or sharing is a sign of weakness. However, this perspective is a misinterpretation of Stoic thought. While the Stoics advocate for emotional mastery, they also recognize the importance of community and human connection. The Stoics, after all, did not live in isolation. They were part of families, societies, and communities, and they understood the need for mutual support and shared understanding. The power of vulnerability. Why sharing struggles makes us stronger. The true richness of life lies not in how we shield ourselves from suffering, but in how we experience and share it with others. It is in our willingness to embrace vulnerability, to acknowledge our pain, and to connect with those around us that we find true strength. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is an expression of our humanity. When we open ourselves to others, we allow them to witness our struggles and, in doing so, create opportunities for empathy, understanding, and mutual support. The idea that suffering must be faced alone, or that we must suppress our emotions in order to appear strong, can be both damaging and counterproductive. Human beings are social creatures, and our greatest moments of growth and healing often come when we allow ourselves to be seen in our most raw and authentic states. In fact, studies in psychology show that sharing our emotional experiences, whether through talking with a friend or seeking professional help, can significantly reduce the impact of stress and trauma. It is through connection, not isolation, that we find resilience. The wisdom of Stoic connection, building community while controlling reactions. While the Stoics place a great deal of emphasis on self-control and individual responsibility, they also recognize the importance of community. Marcus Aurelius, for example, in his Meditations, often writes about the interconnectedness of all people, reflecting on the role of society and the value of supporting one another. He encourages his readers to remember that what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. suggesting that the well-being of the individual is inherently linked to the well-being of the community. The Stoics were not advocating for emotional isolation, but rather for an inner strength that allows us to interact with others in a calm, rational, and compassionate manner. The true Stoic does not shut themselves off from the world. Instead, they approach relationships and emotional experiences with clarity and understanding. They embrace the interconnectedness of life while maintaining the ability to respond to adversity with resilience and wisdom. This aspect of Stoicism emphasizes that emotional control should not mean emotional suppression. It is possible to experience and share our emotions, to lean on others in times of difficulty, and still live according to Stoic principles. In fact, part of living a virtuous life is recognizing the role of empathy, kindness, and support in fostering both individual and collective well-being. When we share our struggles, we invite others to do the same, creating a space of mutual strength where emotional openness is not a vulnerability, but a source of connection. The richness of life, emotional control in service of connection. Ultimately, the true richness of life is not found solely in controlling our reactions or in the isolation of emotional control, but in the ability to experience emotions deeply and authentically, while also sharing them with others. Life is not about becoming immune to suffering. It is about learning how to respond to suffering in a way that allows us to grow, connect, and heal. The Stoic teachings on emotional control provide us with the tools to navigate adversity, but the deeper lesson is in the recognition that we do not have to face life's challenges alone. In embracing vulnerability, we open ourselves to the possibility of deep connection and shared understanding. We allow others to see us as we truly are, flawed, imperfect, and human. And in doing so, we create space for love, empathy, and support. True strength is not in suppressing emotions or in becoming impervious to pain. It is in the courage to feel, to share, and to grow together. Beyond control, living fully through connection. Stoicism, when misinterpreted, may lead us to believe that emotional control means emotional detachment. But the deeper truth is that true strength lies in our ability to feel deeply and to share those feelings with others. Our struggles, when shared, become sources of connection and empathy, making us stronger, not in spite of our vulnerability, but because of it. By embracing both our emotional responses and our interconnectedness with others, we can live richer, more fulfilling lives, finding strength not in our immunity to suffering, but in our shared humanity. Conclusion: the true strength of life lies in balance. The journey through Stoicism teaches us much about control, discipline, and how to respond to adversity with resilience. It shows us the importance of mastering our reactions and seeking serenity in the midst of the storm. But the true richness of life is not only found in emotional control or in the strength to face suffering alone. It lies in our ability to feel deeply, to embrace our vulnerability, and most importantly, to share our struggles with others. True strength, contrary to what we are often told, is not immunity to suffering, but the courage to be present, to be human, and to connect with those around us. In the end, it is not the absence of emotions that makes us strong, but our ability to live fully, with empathy, understanding, and above all, the capacity to open our hearts to others. Life is not a path of isolation, but a shared journey. Therefore, we can live Stoic philosophy in a richer, more balanced, and deeply connected way, remembering that while we control our reactions, we can also allow ourselves to feel, grow, and most importantly, support each other. Because in the end, what truly strengthens us is our ability to be vulnerable, to share, and to live together. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to like and share this video. And remember, true wisdom is in the journey, not in perfection. See you next time.